everyone, and welcome to another episode of Little Give. Go ahead, introduce yourself, tell us where you're from, tell us what you're all about.
Hey, my name is Tara Geraghty. I am coming to you from New Jersey. I am very excited to be here. We're going to have a great conversation. If you follow me at all on social media, you'll see it's Tara's voice. So that's why that's what's here. That's the easiest way to find me.
Awesome. I'm so excited to peel back the layers of you and all that you do. Why don't you go ahead and tell the audience what you're up to now?
Yeah, so I am the founder of the Hey Girl You Can community, and this is a worldwide organization for women. A lot of people asked why I started it. It was an accident. I know that sounds really funny, but I kind of fell into it. So my background is actually in the theater, had nothing to do with business, entrepreneurship. And during the pandemic, I ended up getting onto a social media app, Clubhouse. If you guys don't know, it was like one of the first ones. And it was during the heyday of Clubhouse. It was at a great time where people wanted to connect. They felt isolated. And I was actually looking for parents who had children who were facing basically a life-changing diagnosis. My daughter's a cancer survivor. I have a book called Making Cancer Fun. I work with families who are dealing with this just incredibly life-changing medical diagnosis for their children. And so I thought, well, this would be a great way to connect with other parents. Those parents weren't on the app. So instead, I ended up connecting with a lot of women. And because my full-time business is in coaching and working with women and teaching them how to own businesses, it was kind of this natural extension. And so right now, I'm actually really excited because after a few years, we're finally, like literally in the next month, going to launch our membership, which is something that's been kind of underway, I guess, for a while now. So I'm glad to see that finally come to life.
That's incredible. So your initial idea, it turned out a little different, but isn't that sometimes the best thing that can happen is that little pivot that you don't expect? It just can turn into a really cool thing.
Well, and I think that's so interesting in life because so often we're afraid to take a step because we don't see where that step is leading us. Right. And I will say that my steps, like if you go back to when I was younger and you said, Tara, where do you think you would be at this point in your life? I mean, literally, it's like being on a different planet than where I ever thought I would end up. And so there's a great saying, we have to let go of our plans so that we can make room for God's plans. And so Cindy, we've never talked about this, but there was a season in my life where my whole picture of what I thought my life was going to look like had been just torn apart. I remember describing it as having a picture on a wall. Imagine a picture, a puzzle that you had made and you hung it on the wall. And that was the picture of what you thought your life was going to look like. And it was like somebody shot it and all the puzzle pieces fell apart, had fallen on the floor. And you had no idea how they were going to go back together. And that's how my life felt. I had gone through a domestic violence divorce the same year my only daughter had stage 4 cancer. And I remember just looking and being like, I have no idea what the puzzle is supposed to look like now. Like, this is not what I was told. If I go to college and do well and, graduate at the top of my class, I'll have a beautiful picture. This picture's a mess. And I was so upset. Like, what happened to my picture? And I took a blank photo, like a frame that had no photo in it. And I put it next to my bed. And I think I had gotten this, I had heard a Christian pastor talk about this, that, we have this picture in our life and sometimes we have to let go of that because the picture that God has is actually more beautiful for us and that will show up. And I had this picture next to my bed and my daughter was really little at the time. She was like 4 years old. And she'd be like, Mommy, where's the picture? Like, why is there no picture in there? And I'd be like, well, I don't know what the picture is going to be yet, but God's going to put a picture in there and it's going to be better than what we thought it was going to be. And I think like in her little mind, she thought one day she was going to wake up, there was going to be like a picture, in there. But I had that empty frame for a long time next to my bed. It's like a reminder that one day there will be a beautiful picture in there. It doesn't feel that way right now, but there will be.
Hi, my name is Justin Clark, and I'm the president of the board of directors for Driving Single Parents, a 501c3 nonprofit serving the citizens of San Antonio and Bexar County, Texas. I'm here today to tell you a little bit about the great work that our organization is doing for the citizens of San Antonio. What you're about to see is just a few photos and videos of the way that we're changing lives for single parents in and around San Antonio, Texas. Our first giveaway took place in April of 2017, just one short month after the formation of our organization. John, a Bexar County resident, was the victim of a horrible drunk driver incident. He and his daughter survived the crash, and we were so proud to give our first car to this deserving family. Fast forward to 2020, a very difficult year for nonprofits. We were able to secure 4 vehicles for single parents in need. Our organization, including our board of directors, list of partners, and portfolio of people we've been able to help in San Antonio, continues to grow, and it's all thanks to donors and local community organizations that have helped us along the way. This giveaway took place in 2021 and shows that we continue to help single parents even after the struggles brought about by COVID-19. Because of limited funds and the overwhelming need, we at Driving Single Parents are incredibly selective with the people we help. Some are victims of domestic violence. Others had a spouse pass away tragically or otherwise fell on hard times. These single parents show adversity in the face of challenge and aren't looking for a handout. We offer a hand up and help get them back in the driver's seat. Many of the single parents we help go on to graduate college, get promotions, get married, mentor others, and some have even been so touched by the gift we gave them that they have decided to join our board of directors to pay it forward and ensure the continued growth of our organization. If you would like to help our organization continue to grow and continue to help single parents in need in San Antonio, Texas, and Bexar County, Texas, we would really appreciate your support. Please visit us online at www.drivingsingleparents.org. Thank you.
I think that's a big testament to show other people who are struggling through something or going through something that, hey, you know what? Just because it's not going right now doesn't mean it's not going to, and you never know. And sometimes some of the best memories we have happen because something really tragic happened or happened because we went through something and grew through something. Would you agree with that statement?
100%. I would say that one of my natural gifts, and I don't know if I've taught myself to do this way or if it's natural, so I'll preface it, is that I will find the gift in anything. And for me, it's really a coping skill. It's a coping skill of I need to make sense of why am I going through this, particularly something really difficult. And so if I can find the, well, why am I going through this? What is the gift? What will good come out of it? So this is my book. Then my daughter, she is now 18, believe it or not. She just left for college. This is wild.
Wow.
But, obviously, let's use this as an example, right? My daughter had stage 4 cancer. I was told in an emergency room she was probably most likely going to die. Now, I would not say, hey, that was a great gift and I would love to to go through that again. Or, oh, I hope that you get that gift. I hope nobody has that gift, right? Like that is not something that is good that you want, that you have to go through.
Right.
With that being said, I didn't have much of a choice, right? Like this is the diagnosis that we were looking at. And looking back, if I had to say, like, what is the gift that we got from that is number one, like you don't realize sometimes how strong you are, right? It has opened up opportunities. I've been able to do a book. I had a TEDx talk that I was able to do. My daughter and I have these memories and this bond that we wouldn't have had. I mean, we lived in a hospital room together for over a year, right? We built resilience. I will say that now watching her go to college, she's a pretty resilient kid, like wild. She'll call me and she'll be like, Mom, I don't know. These other kids are like crying. They have to go home. They need, like, they can't handle college. And I think this is worse because these are COVID kids, right? So this generation of kids is struggling even more. And she's like, what's wrong with them? Right? She's super, super resilient. She's learned how to, overcome. And it really, really was a season that taught me incredible bounce back ability. And there's something very powerful when you are so resilient. And just imagine this. Imagine if you knew, and I know you've got an incredible testimony too. Like imagine if you knew nothing and no one can knock you down. And even if you got knocked down temporarily, you would be able to bounce back. That is the level of resilience that you had. It is the number one gift that I hope I can give my daughter. If you talk about like, well, what do you want? What's the gift you want to give your kids? And I always think it's resilience because I'm not always going to be here. And if I'm not here, I want to know that if life knocks her down, that kid can pick herself back up. Right. And hopefully that if you feel that way, you're more likely to take risks. You're more likely to step out of your comfort zone and you're more likely to go after those big, scary dreams that you're meant to have, but you're afraid to go after because you're afraid you're going to fall. But if you're like, well, if I fall, I'll just pick myself back up, you're more likely to go for it. Right.
It's so true. It's so true. And resiliency is such a big component, I think, of life because life is going to knock you down, like it is, whether it be something as small as a flat tire or as major as losing a loved one. I mean, all kinds of things can happen in your life, and they will happen. I mean, life is going to be lifing whether we like it or not. And we all need that bounce back ability. Otherwise, it can really, have a lot of negative impact on us. So I love that that's your number one gift. I think it's incredible. And I love how you've taken your pain and turned it into purpose. And so talk to us a little bit more about how you were able to manage that. Obviously, you're struggling and you're going through this with your daughter, and I'm sure you were probably terrified. And then you end up writing this book about how did you make that jump?
Yeah, it's kind of wild because I did not want to write a book. So I'm just going to preface that. I really pushed against that for a while. What really happened was so I was in the midst of this just really, really horrific domestic violence divorce. I mean, it was a terrible season, and found myself in the emergency room with my daughter. And I was already in crisis. So my life was already, a dumpster fire. And within the first 4 days of being in the hospital, I find out, she's probably not going to survive. Our insurance company dropped us, and they said she had a pre-existing condition. And I remember being like, okay, well, how much do I owe you? I had been in the hospital 4 days, and they were like $96,000. And I was like, well, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. Like, I didn't even know what to say, right? And then I had just signed on for this company called Female Friendly Businesses, and I was their co-host, and I had gone through all the contracts and worked it all out. And I was so excited because this was really going to change my financial situation after my divorce and get me back on my feet. And we had started filming, and it was like this huge deal. And we're in the hospital, and then the nephew of the owner of the company calls me, and he's like, so the owner just like dropped dead, had just had like a stroke or something. And he's like, so we're not sure what's going to happen now if we're still going to go through with this contract and this project. And I remember, Cindy, it's horrible. It's horrible, horrible. But I started laughing. I literally started laughing on the phone because I was like, you got to be kidding me. Like, what else could possibly go wrong in this moment? And so I knew from all of my years of personal development, I knew the phrase, whatever we focus on gets bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
all
true.
I could focus on was that like life was literally falling apart. Like every day, something else was like falling on my lap. Right. And so I thought, all right, I gotta switch this. Whatever you focus on gets bigger. I gotta change this. How am I going to do this? And this is so sad. I didn't even have a laptop. I didn't even have the money for a laptop. And my cousin's boyfriend lent me his little Chromebook. And I sat in the hospital in bed. And this was back in 2010. So this is when Facebook started. And for those of you who, some of you were not alive, but Facebook, it used to be like, there were no pictures, there were no videos, there was nothing like that. It started with I am, and then you filled in the rest of the sentence. Do you remember that? It was like, so I am eating an apple, right? That was what Facebook was. And they had a little notes section where you could take notes. And so I said, okay, I'm going to do a gratitude journal. I'm going to start writing everything that I'm grateful for, because I need to change my focus. I need to focus on what the good stuff is. And I'm going to force myself to do this. And I decided to put it on Facebook as a little bit of an accountability for myself. I will be accountable, and I'll post it there. And it was wild. People started following, people started commenting. Like it was not what I expected, right? This was just for me. And then people really started getting invested in our story. And then from that, I ended up where I started journaling, and I would post the journal on there. And then people started following that. And then a friend of mine made a group. Now, again, this is 2010. Like there weren't groups like there are now, right? So nobody even knew what a group was. And most people weren't even on Facebook. And then all of a sudden, this little group had 1,000 people in it, which was like unheard of. And people were so invested. And we kept that group for a while. And what ended up happening was, after she was done with treatment and people had kind of followed our story. And again, there was no Instagram, there was none of that stuff. It was all word of mouth, really. Somebody said to me, you should write a book. And I said, no. I said, I'm not writing a book. I just want this to be over. I want to get back to my real life and put this all behind me. And I had a friend, very wise woman, and she said, you know what? Okay, don't write a book. Just record. Just record what you did, because you're going to forget, right? You're going to forget all these little things that you did. So just record. So I spent about 6 months of my life where I would be driving wherever I was going, and I would just have my voice recorder on in my car. And I literally would just record what we did for like 6 months. I would just think of all the different things that we did, and I would just record it. And I just tucked it away with no plans to ever look at it again. And a couple, like, I don't know, like a year or two go by, And we're at the hospital with my daughter, and she's doing her follow-up treatment now. And we've moved from Colorado. We're now living in New Jersey. She's at Children's Hospital in Philadelphia. We're doing follow-up treatment. She had to go every 3 months. And I was sitting across from this mom, and I will still, it just still feels very, very emotional. I was sitting across from this mom. Her little boy had the same diagnosis as my daughter, which is one of the worst ones you can get. So I appreciate that. And she was racked with fear. You could see fear in her body, in her eyes, everything. And this little boy is coloring. My daughter's coloring next to him. And I'm like, so what kind of cancer are you doing? Like, we were probably there in costumes, honestly, because we went to all of her follow-up treatments in costumes and made it a party and had a theme. So she probably thought I was a nutso. And I'm like, what kind of cancer are you doing? And she's like, he has neuroblastoma. And I was like, oh my God, we did neuroblastoma. Like, high five, right? And she's like, no, like the bad kind, like the stage 4 kind. And I was like, oh, we're stage 4 too. Yay. And she's like, no, like, he's not doing well. And as I'm talking to her, first of all, he was not even halfway through treatment. He still had so much treatment left. And at the point that he was at, my daughter was not doing well at that point either. And here my daughter was now done with treatment, right? And I wanted to take this woman and a cross between, I wanted to hug her because I felt so bad for her because she was so afraid, and you could see she felt so hopeless and helpless. And I wanted to shake her at the other part of me and be like, stop it. You've got to get your shit together for your kid. You cannot stay here in fear. He's going to feel this. Like, stop putting his one foot in the grave. The kid is still here. Like, you need to get it together, lady. Right? And I was so like, I felt so torn. And when I went home, that just so struck with me. And there's a saying that Brendan Burchard says, and he says that if you have been through the fire and you have come out the other side, you have an obligation to go back and throw water on people who are still in the fire. And that moment like changed me, because I was like, I have been through the fire. I have tools. I have ways that I was able to cope that got us through it. And I have a moral obligation to go back and throw water on this people, and teach them these tools and these resources. And that was when I decided to write the book.
Wow,
So
what a beautiful
something I
story.
planned. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful story. And it's amazing because, of course, some people, they just want to get past it and they want to forget about it and put it in the past and just be done with it. But it's amazing that you took the time to like go back and throw water on those people that really needed the help and needed to see that there was a bright side and there was a way to look at it differently. And so I love that.
Yeah. And it was hard. I mean, I remember like one of the final edits sitting in my living room. It was like a holiday and I was under a deadline to get it done. And I was just bawling. And my brother like said to my daughter, he's like, does she always do this? When my daughter's like, yeah. Yep. And when I put the final edit on it, I closed it and I said, I will never read that again. Like, I don't need to relive that at all. It was it was hard. But I will say it was worth it. And it is worth it every single time of family or somebody says to me like, hey, this really helped. And so sometimes I think we have to be willing to do the hard stuff because that is our gift to others. So.
So true. So whenever you were writing the book and everything, did it feel therapeutic or did it feel traumatizing? Because I get both sides from people whenever they've written a book.
Yeah. I will say I don't know that it felt traumatizing. I wouldn't say that. I think the writing, because what it was really is I took a lot of the writing that I had been writing in that journal over the years that people had been following. Like my friend had turned it into a blog and I had this like little blog and I would just write on the blog about, that. I think that was very therapeutic. So the book itself, everything was kind of already done. I took the recordings. I had those transcribed. I had all the writing from all of those years during her treatment. So the actual putting the book together wasn't either. I would say it was neither of those, but I think the writing, the initial writing when she was in the hospital and writing all of that was extremely therapeutic. Yes, 100%.
Hi, my name is Andrew Fraley, and I believe that sometimes we all need a little bit of help. If you're in the San Antonio community and you need some legal help, call me at 210-725-4658.
This is such an incredible story. So that obviously you have no problem being vulnerable and sharing through all the things you've mentioned so far, sharing your journey. A lot of people, they maybe feel a little afraid to share some of that. So I love the fact that you have this platform. So let's talk more about your platform where you let others share their story.
Yeah, and I think that's a big part of with Hey Girl You Can and why people were so attracted to it. Uh, because I'm very transparent. And I think that we live in a world where, and it's interesting when you say that, people don't want to be transparent. People don't want to be vulnerable. They want to look like they have it all together. Uh, they don't want to look wrong, right? They don't want to look like they don't have it together. And there was something incredibly freeing when my daughter was in her cancer treatment because I mean, the rug had been pulled right out from underneath me, right? Like, here my life had fallen apart. I was going through this crazy divorce. My daughter has cancer. Like, I didn't have to look like I had it together. And I was somebody who had spent my whole life trying to look like I had it together. I started my first business at 20 years old. I was training women who were my mother's age. I always wore a suit. Image was very important to me because I had this leadership position. And so I really always wanted to look like I had it together. And let me tell you, once I didn't have to look like that anymore, it was fantastic. It was freeing. It was like, well, my life is a dumpster fire. Welcome to the party. Like, I don't have to look like I have it together anymore. And I really think that's what attracted it was crazy to me. My business started to grow, people started to get attracted, and it made me realize it's like we live in this world and social media has just made it worse, right? Where everybody is like, I'm not good enough. Everybody else seems so perfect. And here's the powerful thing, when you're willing to be vulnerable, when you're willing to be transparent and be like, look, I don't know what's going on either. I am just trying to like get through the day like the rest of the world, like everybody else really is, except I'm going to be honest about it. It's almost like it gives everybody else the ability to go, me too. Right? Like, it gives people the freedom to drop that need to look like, and I don't even know, Cindy, I don't even know what that comes from. Like, why do we need to look like we have it all together? Who has it all together? Who are these people? Because I don't think they're real.
Oh, I don't think they're real either. And that just kind of brings me to my book that I wrote called Beyond the Smile. And it's a solo book of just me talking about my domestic violence past and all the things that I've gone through and grown through. And like, hey, you know what? You might see me on the cover of a magazine, but that doesn't mean I have it all figured out, because I don't. And look at all this, I love how you say a trash can fire. It's like, yeah, this is what I have, a dumpster fire all the time in my life. And it's never perfect and it's never gonna be perfect. And I think that really has opened doors, and for people to say like, oh, she's just a real regular person like us. Yes, all of us are regular people just like each other. And so it's so weird how whenever you're in that situation like you were, where you're trying to be perfect all the time, you feel like you're the only one who's not perfect and you're working so hard to be perfect, whenever in fact, none of us are perfect. So I love that you shared that. And I think that that is why people are attracted to you and to, Hey Girl. So I think
Well,
it's
and I'm
amazing.
curious because I bet you do get this quite a lot. Do you have this where people are like, you don't look like somebody who could have gone through domestic violence?
Yes, all the time. People
Yeah.
always say it's amazing that, what are you like, what? That's like a little off-putting, but it
Mhm.
is true. And it's so, it happens to a lot of people. It's not just me, it's not just you, it's a lot of people. And people just think that, you don't look like a domestic violence survivor. You don't look like somebody who would tolerate that. You don't look like somebody who would have to. But there is no look like. It could happen to anyone at any stage at any point in their life.
Well, and I will say, so this is very interesting. So it's 1 in 4 women. So 1 out of 4 women will be, victimized by domestic violence. And I've done a lot of advocacy when you talk about like what is the gift and things that you go through. One of the huge gifts is I've had the privilege of being able to do advocacy. I was on the State and Public Affairs Committee. I've been able to work on bills here in New Jersey to get laws changed. And even just being a resource. I mean, now it's kind of like crazy. People are like, if they hear somebody's going through that, they're like, here, reach out to my friend Tara. She's got like the places to go to and all that. Um, However, one of the things that I've really learned, right? And I saw this when I was getting divorced, because quite openly, I had a very difficult time. People didn't believe me because I didn't look like what people thought a domestic violence victim should look like. And I don't talk about this very often. Actually, I don't actually think I've ever talked about this publicly. So you will be the first person. My ex-husband was stalking me. And we knew he was stalking me because I lived in a state where they would put high risk offenders with a GPS on them and they would monitor them. They don't have that in New Jersey, but where I was living at the time, they did. So they were able to prove that he was legit stalking me. And I had multiple restraining order violations, and they could see exactly where he was marked on the map. And they would not press a stalking charge. A stalking charge is a felony charge. It had a much higher consequence. And I remember sitting there. I'll never forget. I remember sitting in the office with the the prosecutor and the DA, and they were like, oh, yeah, we know he's stalking you. We can prove it. We can see it on the map. We won't be able to get a conviction. And I was like, I don't understand. And they said, well, if it goes to trial, no, the level to prove stalking is an emotional distress. The victim has to be in emotional distress, and that's what causes the stalking. Like that would be what would meet the criteria. And they said, you're still working, you're still taking care of your daughter, you're still holding down a job. We are not going to be able to prove that you are in a high enough level of emotional distress to get a stalking charge. And I remember looking at them, and I was like, so you're telling me that because I refuse to let this person destroy my life, sit in a corner, like I want to go sit in the corner. I want to go cover myself in a blanket, sit in the corner and never come out. Like that's what I want to do. But I have a child who's 2 years old. I don't have the luxury to do that. And I own my own business. I don't have the luxury to just let that fall apart. Like I would love to do that. I would love to be so emotionally distressed that I didn't have to deal with life. But I don't have the luxury to do that. I have people counting on me. So because I am because I am strong enough to not let this person destroy my life, that means that he cannot be held accountable for his actions that you can prove. And they were like, yep. And I was like, wow, I don't even know what to do with that information. And so,
Wow.
yeah, can you imagine? I was like, what? So I was like, this can't even be true, but it was true. And they didn't go through a stalking charge. They went for other stuff. But when we talk about domestic violence, it is not the people that you think. It is usually not the person that you think. And what happens is this is why I'm very open about my domestic violence, because I think that when we are silent about it, we protect the victims protect the perpetrators, because we don't want to, people say, oh, you went through domestic violence, and it's instantly like, oh, what are her daddy issues? What is wrong with her? What is her self-esteem? How did she let herself have that happen to her? And I've learned that it is a natural thing for other people to respond that way because it is a self-protection. They do not want to think that it can happen to them, and they do not want to think it can happen to their daughter or somebody that they love. It is the same reason why if a woman is raped, one of the first things people say are, well, where was she and what was she wearing and what was she doing? Because in our mind, it's this idea, well, somehow she must have been responsible for that, because that way it couldn't just happen to me. Like I couldn't be a victim of that. It must have been something she was doing. Right. It's really kind of sick and twisted. But we do it in domestic violence, right? Well, she must have daddy issues. She must have self-esteem issues. She must have something wrong with her. That's what got her into this relationship. And the research, the actual body of research shows the offenders, there are criteria. There are specific things that you can look at an offender and that you can determine if this person would be at a high risk or not to be a domestic violence offender. But when it comes to victims, nope. There's nothing that's a list that you could say, well, if you have a woman and she's got these certain things, these are higher risks. It is anybody, any economic class, any race, any background, any self-esteem issue. I mean, gaslighting is real. Emotional manipulation is real. People think that it cannot happen to me. And sadly, that is not true. And so I think that is why I talk about it so much, because I'm like, it can happen to anybody. Don't think that it can't happen to you. It can't happen to your daughter. It can. And by not talking about it, we make it easier for it to happen.
Wow. Yes. And I'm glad you share your story, because you're right. Some people are out there and they're experiencing something like this maybe, or they've been through it, or their child's going through it. And then they think that they're the only ones and they feel alone. So I always love it when people come on and share their stories and their testimonies, because that can show somebody else that, hey, wait, I'm not the only one. So, and I don't have to be weak and powerless. I can be a strong woman and still have this happen to me. So I think that that's incredible that you're willing to share.
Yeah. And I love the title of your book, Beyond the Smile. It's behind or beyond? Behind the Smile?
Beyond. It's beyond the smile. And the reason why I titled it that is because, wherever you go, whether it be the grocery store, the boardroom, or the courtroom, or wherever you're looking at a judge, a doctor, a lawyer, they always have something going on beyond that smile. It might have been they had a flat tire. It might have been they'd be going through domestic violence. It might be that they're experiencing a gambling issue. It might be that they're going through a divorce. It could be any number of things. But no matter who it is, what race, no matter where you live, no matter who you are, male, female, it doesn't matter. There's always something going on beyond the smile. So that's why I titled it that.
I love that.
Thank you. Well, I want to ask you the two questions I ask all of my guests. Can you give the audience an example of a little thing that they can do in their community that might just be a little give on their end, but might make a big impact on the other side?
Yeah, so I was reading this and I'm like, I don't know if this, I have no idea what other people have answered this question. So you might be like, Tara, this is the worst answer. But this is what I thought, because I am a small business owner and I am all about supporting local business owners, local economy, people who are in your community who are investing in stimulating your economy, right? Their livelihood and shopping small. Like I prefer to go to that local coffee shop, right, than the franchise. I shouldn't say franchises because franchises can be owned by people in your community, but like a corporate company, right? So that small mom and pop business is always going to be great. And so something you can do in your community is number one is to support those local businesses, but give them good reviews. Go and give them a good review. And I just saw this, so it's a little bit of a soapbox for me right now. And it was a thing about, I saw this on Facebook and it was talking about how you don't realize the power of that small Yelp review or that power of that small Google search review because it helps boost their SEO, right? Take a photo, say how great it was. But here's what I find really interesting. And how many of you guys see this? And because I've seen this and I just think it's wild. People will go to a local mom and pop store and they'll go there for 10 years and love it. And then they'll go in one time and they'll have a bad experience. And they will go to Google review and they will live it a 1 star and they will say, this is the even worse part. They're like, we've been coming here for 10 years and we've always loved it. But this time when we came in, listen to what happened to us. And they give that 1 star, which then drops their rankings. But they didn't, for the 10 years they were going, having great service, give them 5 stars. It's kind of that idea that you don't know until somebody's annoyed and then they love to complain about it. So just a really small give that you can give in your community is that when you go into a business, when you go into a local business, just leave them a 5-star review. If you had a good experience, if it was good, like help that local person get seen, get a good review, because we all do that. We go and how many of us, when you go to a restaurant, what's the first thing I do? I'm looking to see like what are the reviews? Did people like it? Was it a good star? Like you don't realize that what's so insignificant for us to do can have such a significance for another person. So even just, put it on Facebook, be like, hey, we had dinner at this new local restaurant. You should go check it out. Or, we went to this new local bookstore. It was great. Go check it out. Like support the people who are in your community and their businesses and help them spread the word, because wouldn't you love somebody to do that for you?
Oh, that's perfect. I've never had anybody say that before, but I say that to people all the time is like, just leave a review. It takes you 2 minutes. It takes you less than 2 minutes. Even if you just put the 5 stars and don't write anything, that can help a local business so much, because you're right. Just like on Amazon, we all use the tool of, well, what are the reviews? But then to not take the time to give back and give that review for somebody else to see is just ridiculous. So I am with you. And I'm so glad you said that. I've been hoping somebody was going to say that on this show.
Really?
So
I was like, oh, I don't know if that's a little weird, but okay.
No, that's a little give. It doesn't cost you anything. So I love it. So
Yeah, we call it digital love. Gives people some digital love.
Oh, I like that too.
Yeah.
So the second question is, can you give the audience an example of a time in your life where somebody did something little for you that might have just been, a little give on their end, but really made a big impact on you and in your life?
Yeah. And it still does, because I'll get teary talking about it. So I told you guys that when I decided to write my book, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. But it was also at a season in my life when I was rebuilding my life. I had moved back to New Jersey, literally used my tax return to move. I was trying to restart my business. I often was going to work and paying like the little bit of money that I made to my babysitter. And so it was a really tough season financially. And so I was like, okay, I want to write this book, but I have no money. And I just thought like, okay, well, I'll just throw a book up, and I'll self-publish it and I'll stick it up on, Kindle Direct or whatever. And then as I started talking to friends and like having, them being like, okay, that's not really how you write a book, and you need an editor and you need to have it formatted right. And it needs to look good. And, I wanted to put pictures in it. I thought, oh my God, this is going to be so much money. This is way more than like what I bargained for. And I had a couple of friends who said, well, you should do a GoFundMe. And I said, I'm not going to do that. I literally have been living on fundraisers for the couple of years that like my daughter was going through treatment. I mean, people were literally doing fundraisers for us while she was in treatment. So I thought there is no way that now, after all that people have given us and everything that we've received from other people, I'm going to be like, can you give me money so I can write a book? I was like, no, not doing that. And I had somebody say, well, just think about it. People do that. I said, yeah, I'll think about it. I'm still not going to do it. And so I really started to pray about it. And I was like, all right, like if you want this book written, this is not my thing that I want done. If you want this book written, like you better open up some doors to show me how I'm supposed to get this money. If you think I should do this GoFundMe, I need like clear confirmation because this does not feel right to me. This does not feel good to me. And it was about 2 weeks of kind of like praying on it, praying on it, praying on it. And I don't remember exactly, but two things happened in the same day. Like two people said something or came to me or something, but it was like clear confirmation to do this GoFundMe. And it happened right away. And it was like when you just know God is speaking to you, just know, right? And I was like, all right, I guess we're going to do this GoFundMe. And so I threw up this GoFundMe, kind of like embarrassed. And that one of the very first people who donated was my daughter's surgeon. And I'm going to preface this that she has been on the cover of 5280 as one of the number one surgeons in the entire state. She has dealt with thousands and thousands of kids. She literally saved my daughter's life, legit saved my daughter's life. And she had followed our story and we had stayed in touch. And we were, on Facebook. And when she saw that I was doing this, she donated. And she said in her donation, she said, I have, worked with tons and tons of families. But what they did was so different and this book needs to be written. Like they need to share their story. And then her nurses donated. And I will get
Wow.
emotional. So when you talk about that, like a little thing, and this wasn't like a huge amount of money. This was people giving, I think she gave like $200, right? But people who gave $25, gave $50, who were like, we followed their story. We want this story to be heard. We want her to share this with other people. And in a month, I had enough money to fund the book. And I just remember thinking like, this isn't about me. This isn't about my daughter. This is about the people who have been so invested in our story and in watching and being with us over the last, couple years and seeing my daughter from where she was to where she is now. And they so believe in this. And it gave me the confidence, like, well, if they believe this is worth sharing, right? And that is how I ended up with a book. So it was not, anything it really was it was a God thing. It was not a me thing. And it was in the community. And that's also why I'm a huge, huge, huge advocate on building community. And I always say the community is the new currency. That old saying of like people used to say, your network is your net worth, kind of thing. But so I always say community is your new currency and you build your community before you need it. I was building that community, not thinking, a couple of years later, I'm going to write a book, right? I was just building a community and building important people around me and in building connections and things like that. And so you build your community. You have no idea when you're going to need that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, we need community. We're not meant to do this life alone. As humans, we need our people. We need everybody, the people that love us, that we love, and people we don't even know we can impress on their lives. They can impress on ours. We need that connection. So I loved having you on today. And I'm really excited to talk about this nonprofit that you want to feature today. Can you go ahead and tell us about that?
Yes. So Give Kids the World. And some people know this and some people don't. So it's an incredible story. So Give Kids the World is literally this village in Florida. And it was started, and the story behind it is so powerful. So children get to go there if they have a life-threatening illness. Okay. So cancer kids go there, but it could be any kid who has a life-threatening illness. And it is completely free to the families. And so when they go there, they live in this village for a week. Each family gets a little house. There's little golf carts. And every night they do a different kind of thing. So like one night is Christmas and they literally bring in a Santa Claus and give these kids gifts. And one night is Halloween and everybody gets dressed up and they do a Halloween. And they do it because that family may not get another Christmas with their kids. That family may not get another Halloween with their kids. Then they have partnerships with Disney, and Disney brings the characters in. And when you go to Give Kids the World, you get, tickets to Disney and Epcot and like all the places that you want to go. And the parents pay nothing, not $1. The siblings can come. They have this beautiful, like each kid gets a star, and there's a star tower, and they can go in. So like forever, my daughter can go back to Give Kids the World, and there's a star tower that she can go in and see her star. I mean, it's just this incredible, magical, beautiful, miraculous place. The story behind it is even more impressive. I have the book of the guy who created Give Kids the World. He was a survivor from Nazi Germany. And literally, there were multiple times that he thought he was going to be killed in concentration camps as a young child. And he ended up escaping. I think his entire family was killed in the Holocaust. He ended up escaping and somehow made his way to America, and ended up kind of like, at the bottom of the American dream pole, wherever that is, and worked his way up until eventually he ended up being very successful, and he owned hotels in Florida. And there was a little girl, she had leukemia, and her dream was to go to Disney. And they had reached out to him and said, "Hey, can we put her up in your hotels? You have all these hotels. Her dream is to go to Disney. Can you put her up in a hotel?" And he said, "Sure." And they were trying to, coordinate it for this little girl to come and to go to Disney and to stay in his hotel. But she died before she was able to do that. And this is a man who didn't have a childhood because the Nazis stole his childhood. And he was so distraught from that. And he said he never, ever wanted that to happen again, that he made it his mission to build this world, this Give Kids the world, where now a child, a terminally ill child, a child who has a life-threatening illness, I mean, I think it's like 24 hours, they can get them there and get them into the village so that the family can have that. Now for us, Emily did hers through Make-A-Wish. And so the Make-A-Wish program, she got to go to Give Kids the World. That was what we did. And it was interesting because when she initially got diagnosed, they had said, we'll do a Make-A-Wish. But because of the situation with her dad, and it was a horrific situation, I was like, you know what, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to get involved in that. I don't want to have any issues with her father. I have a lifetime restraining order from him. Like, I don't want anything to do with this. We will not do a wish. And circumstances changed, and he was no longer able to have contact with her, and so he wasn't part of that picture, and that was unfortunate, that the choices that he made, but that's how that worked out. So now she has a lifetime restraining order, and at that point I said, okay, well, we can go back and revisit your Make-A-Wish. And I will tell you guys, because she was so small when we got divorced, we had never taken a vacation. And never a vacation we had never done a vacation like that. And we had just gone through all of her treatment. So we actually went as she was finishing up her treatment, like she was done with treatment. And it was incredible because after a couple of years between, going through the domestic violence and going through her cancer and kind of finally trying to get to the end of that week was one of the most incredible, magical weeks and I was so grateful. We actually ended up, this is wild, we ended up on the news because they were celebrating, I think, like 200 million volunteer hours or 2 million volunteer hours or something. I don't remember. And they called me and they were like, would you guys mind being featured on our news? So if you actually Google, us and Give Kids the World, you'll see there's an old from like 2000, I think it's like 2011 or 2012 news feature of her. And, she's talking about how much she loves Give Kids the World, but it's a beautiful nonprofit. The man who created it is just, when they talk about like angels on earth, I mean, it was an incredible, his story is so inspiring and powerful, and the legacy that he left and the difference that he has made in these families, and that continues to live on, long after he is not here. But it's an organization most people don't even know about, and it's magical. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I think you described it best, a magical place. That's such an incredible nonprofit. Thank you so much for featuring that today. I definitely will be going and checking it out and reading more on that backstory. That's incredible. Why don't you tell the audience if they want to get to know more about you and all that you do, where they can reach you and find out more?
Yeah. So you can go to my website. It's just Tara G Online. It's very easy to find. If you are interested in the Hey Girl You Can community, particularly if you're like, I need a community of women around me that are going to encourage me to be the best version of myself, build my confidence, go after my dreams, go check that out. But if you go to my website, there is in the top, you'll see the resiliency challenge. And so, one of my soapbox platforms, whatever you want to call it, is I really truly believe resiliency is the very most important gift that we can give our kids. And we cannot give our children something we do not possess. So we need to be able to be resilient in order to be able to pass it on to our children. And so the resiliency challenge, the way it works is I drop an email in your inbox for 5 days. And every day I'm going to teach you one tool. I'm going to give you one tool that you can put in your toolbox, which will make you the most resilient person that you know. And when you have that level of resiliency, that life will knock you down no matter what happens, you're going to bounce back up. You are going to be strong. Number one, you'll be able to pass it on to your children. But number two, I hope that it will give you the confidence to go after your dreams, your goals, the impact and the legacy that you are meant to make on this world.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Well, everybody, you heard where to find her and all the things that she has to offer, and definitely get in touch, find out more, see how you guys can work together, join that community, and maybe the membership is going to be available where everybody can get involved with that as well. If that nonprofit was something you were passionate about or you'd like to learn more about, go to their website, find out more. And if you're really passionate about it, go donate. $1 or $5 can go a long way to these nonprofits. Multiplied by the many people we have watching this, it makes a huge impact, and I've seen it work. So please do find out more about Tara, and also go on and look at that nonprofit website. I'm so grateful that you came on today, and I really look forward to following your story from here on out. And everybody who is watching, we will see you all next week. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Little Give. If you would like to learn more about how I highlight ordinary people doing extraordinary things to help others, or maybe you'd like to be a guest, or maybe you know a nonprofit that you would like to see featured on a future episode of Little Give, you can find all the information on our website at littlegive.com. If you'd like to get involved with our kindness clip segment, please do send in those videos. Send them via email to cindy@littlegive.com. Or you can tag us on any social media under Cindy Witteman or #LittleGive. If you'd like to know more about our podcast, you can also find us on all major streaming platforms under Little Give Podcast. Please do find our Facebook group under Little Give TV show and join it. We'd love to keep you up to date with future episodes. Thank you all so much for watching, and I can't wait to highlight the next ordinary person doing extraordinary things to help others. See you next time.